Welcome to my Accent is No Accident podcast. I am your host, Maritza Perez. And we are here today with a wonderful woman, a mother, a wife, and a writer, podcaster, and podcast coach, Heidy De La Cruz. I'm going to read your bio to the audience so that they can learn more about you. Heidy De La Cruz is a published writer, author, and podcaster. She writes the weekly newsletter Into My Thoughts on Substract, where she writes personal development content, life experiences with life lessons, and faith-based encouragement posts. Heidy is the host of The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast, where immigrants share their stories about moving to the United States. She holds a master's degree in healthcare administration and a bachelor's degree in psychology. She also works as a medical coding analyst. In her free time, she enjoys reading, listening to podcasts, watching movies, and spending time with her dear husband and two kids. Welcome, Heidy. It is a pleasure to see you again and to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Thank you so much, Maritza, for having me on. I'm so honored to be here today.
I am very happy to see you again. I love your podcast. I was a guest on it,
Yes.
and then a funny story, we had to redo our thing.
Yes.
We wanted to kind of innovate and do it in person, and the acoustics looks like weren't that good, and our sound was not helping. But that gave us the opportunity to meet again, and
Yeah.
today here we are. So, Heidi, the first question that I am going to ask is my signature question. Please, Heidi, tell me what is your accent and why it's not an accident?
Ooh, what is my accent? So, I am a child of two Dominican immigrants. So I would say I have a Dominican accent. Although I was born in New York, I wasn't raised there. I was raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I had one person tell me like, "Oh yeah, you do sound like you're from New York." I'm like, "No, no, I don't." It could be just because of the Dominican in me, but it is not an accident. God, I truly believe God puts us in the places where we're born, the family with intention, in the place of history that we're in with intention. We're in this time for a reason, and so that is why it's not an accident.
I love it. Yes. So, as a fellow Latina, I know how proud we are of who we are. And we are also, we grow up different, I think. We grew up with a different sense of the family and the world around us. Would you like to talk about how was growing up with Dominican parents in a different country?
It was it was hard navigating both of the two cultures. I will say that. It was definitely a challenge. There was a lot of things that I was like, I don't understand. Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? But it just wasn't in our culture, right? It wasn't our norm. And so my parents really just stuck with their norms, stuck with what they knew. They obviously, when you come to a new country, there is adaptation, right? There is adapting to the American culture, but there's certain things that like our values and our beliefs is like, we stay with that. And so yeah, so sometimes like even my friends would get frustrated, like, why can't your parents, let you do that? And I'm like, they just, don't. But and then also as an adult looking back with children, like it makes more sense. It's protection and sense of security and things like that. So it was definitely that. Also identity tug as a child of immigrants that you have. It's like, oh, I'm too Dominican for my friends, too American for my family, when you go home and visit, when we went back to Dominican Republic, my family gringa, like I'm gringa, I'm
Yes.
to them, I'm American. I'm not even Dominican. And I'm just like, but no, I am Dominican. Like I speak the language, we eat the foods and, we have the custom, but to them, you're an American, you're a gringa. So there's that. But I absolutely love our Dominican culture. Very, very proud. um we're really big on Christmas, and so like by November I'm blasting Dominican music, Dominican Christmas music, because I find it's like better than the American one. So blasting the merengue, blasting the salsa, and just bringing all that goodness, that cheer. And then I'll see videos of DR, like Christmas in DR, like people are dancing in the streets. It's a celebration. And we're just like, oh, I miss that. Because, as a child, my parents would take us. We've spent a few Christmas in DR, and it's just like, oh, I miss that. Like, it's a party every single day. So, yeah.
I love that because you're opening my eyes to something that is happening with my daughter. My daughter is the first generation like you are,
Mm,
born and raised here. And many of her American friends are like, but why you can go? Why can't you
hmm
stay with
Yeah.
us? Why can't you spend the night, us
Spend the
three?
night.
And then
Hmm
we're like, no. And but
Yeah.
why not? No, no, it's just not. You're not old enough to do it.
Yeah.
Now she's 16, so she can do some spending nights, but I need to know the parents. I need to know the house and things like that. So that's very cultural. And all obviously there are some values like you're saying. Um, and she has that thing that you say that she's Colombian, but she was born here. When she goes to Colombia, they're like, oh, she's such a gringuita.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. hmm
So it is funny, and then a little bit of accent in Spanish. It is fascinating how when you are in that first generation, but now you have your own kids
hmm
and they're totally American. Is
Oh,
there any
yes.
Dominican on them?
So I am currently struggling with my daughter to speak Spanish. So when she was little, and I'm doing this with my son too, when she was little, I just spoke strictly Spanish to her. And so it was easier also for me because it was like, okay, simple words like leche, agua, tienes hambre, things like that. So she grew up just speaking Spanish, and then obviously when she was little, I was with my parents. I was living with my parents, and my stepmom's mom was there, so she was the one who took care of Leah, and so she was surrounded by Spanish, so that's all she spoke. But when it came to when she started school, is all in English. So as she started to learn English, she navigated more towards English, and then me myself, as since I grew up here, English, right? When she would ask me certain questions and I had to like really explain like in details and why and things like that, it was just easier for me to explain it in English. So we just got more used to, and then eventually I moved out of my parents' house and into my own apartment and things like that. So it just became easier to speak in English. And so, but then I'm like, I don't want her to lose her Spanish because she's gonna speak English at school, but home I wanted to be Spanish, how like I grew up, and that's how I throughout the years I've been able to stay with my Spanish. But she just does not want to, and even now in the summer she goes to the Dominican Republic with her dad, so I know she's speaking Spanish over there. But again, that's only 3 months out of the year. So the
Yeah.
majority of the time she's speaking English. And I've tried to tell her like, like, okay, you got to learn Spanish so you can communicate with your dad's family, and you got to learn Spanish so, because that's our culture. Like we speak Spanish. And she wants to be a teacher. And so we're in Florida, and there's a huge Hispanic community here, and there's a lot of people who immigrate. So I tell her like, what if you're a teacher and there's a kid who comes from a Spanish speaking country and you have to help them, but you don't know Spanish? Like, how are you going to feel that as a teacher that you're not able to help this child? And she like thought about it, but she still like doesn't. So that's my struggle right now with her. And then in regards to my son, he's about to be 2. So yeah, we speak to him only Spanish. However, like when me and my husband are speaking, like we tend to speak English a lot, even though he was born also in the Dominican Republic. So it's a struggle over here in this household with the whole language thing. So yeah, as my own children, we do try to keep, some Dominican traditions and cultures and things like that, because again, my husband was born in the Dominican Republic, so he's full Dominican. However, of course, after living here for so many years, he came when he was 9. So, and I was born here. So it's just like blending of the two. We're definitely more Americanized than what like his parents and my parents are.
Yeah.
So, but I do want them to at least keep the language, because, as children, as the generations get further and further away from, our home country, we do tend to lose a little bit of the culture because of where we live.
Yes. So, I'm going to tell you a story about my daughter. My daughter, when I had Lucia, the majority of my friends were American.
Mm.
And obviously, our family was Hispanic, but our friends, it was through work, are American. And then, as your parents are immigrants, it is difficult to start building your social life. So you kind of like build it around work, and then you make friends
Mm-hmm.
with your coworkers more than just going out and stuff. And I also was part of a mama's group, and they were all American. So funny thing at home, because we are living still with my mom, but back then she helped us with Lucia. And then we're here in the house speaking Spanish all the time,
Yeah.
like what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing with your son. However, if somebody will come to our house or we will go somewhere, we will speak English. So my daughter um, was perfectly bilingual. She will learn and she will answer in Spanish, and sometimes she will answer in English. But we noticed that when she was talking to the kids, she will answer in English to them and talk to English in English to them. Then fast forward to school, I started noticing the same thing that you are noticing with your daughter. Oh, the Spanish. So, couple of tips. What we did was we put her in a dual enrollment
Mm.
where she was learning both languages at the same time, and then being in a bilingual. But she is really good at speaking Spanish. She just didn't want to
Mm.
for a while, and I think it's age.
Okay.
And now she speaks Spanish, and she switched. She's 16, and she switched back and forth. But I think there is a time between 9 and 12, 14 almost, when they are the reluctant to speak the language
Yeah.
for some reason, but they know it. They just don't want you to know, to tell, to know.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that they feel like is my parents speak so well in Spanish, and I sound so funny. And that's when we started talking about accents with her. And I said, having an accent is beautiful. And it's not an accident. It's beautiful to
Mm-hmm.
have an accent because you have a story. There's a story behind it, and people need to concentrate on the story. So that's one of the things that we did. But I think that it comes with age, depending on the kid. And then my cousin, for instance, she grew up in New York and never spoke Spanish. And when she was an adult, she's like, caramba, every time I go to Colombia or Costa Rica, I am like, I have no idea what my family is saying. So she learned in Spanish
Yeah.
once she was in college.
Yeah. Not too late.
Yes.
Never
So
too late.
I know. So there are many beautiful things and many beautiful stories about our cultures and how they shaped us as we grew up and made us who we are today. But then I also want to talk about your book, your poetry, and your
Oh. So the book is called Words from the Heart, and it's these collection of poems that I wrote when I was going through a very difficult situation with my previous relationship. It was toxic and had to deal with infidelity and things like that. So it also talks about mental health in regards to my depression, dealing with depression and anxiety. So it was these poems that I wrote during that period. And then also as I was going through therapy for that and kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So the book starts, very heavy, very dark, and then it gets to kind of like, the healing and then the journey like afterwards. So, and then there's also a chapter there about my mom. It's not like a happy mom daughter relationship type poems because the thing is that my mom had bipolar disorder, and I say had because she passed away in 2016.
Oh,
So like a year and a half or like almost 2 years before she passed, she actually got diagnosed. So she had bipolar disorder pretty much her whole life and no one knew anything about it. So looking back after I studied psychology and everything, I was like, okay, like the actions and the stuff and the situations that she would put us in makes sense because of her mental health disorder and it going undiagnosed and untreated, right? So poems have to deal with that, with like my relationship with my mother and how tough it was and things like that. So writing those poems in that period of my life was very therapeutic. And I realized, people deal with infidelity and being in toxic relationships and hard stuff. And I decided to share those poems as a way of like being that person's like, I see you. I've been there. I made it out. I'm still here. I can be there for you. Like you can make it out yourself. And so kind of like that encouragement of if they are in a toxic relationship, probably give them that encouragement to leave because it's not easy. And or just someone who may be on the other side of it and just may feel alone, like, so it's just that encouragement. So I independently published, so I self-published, and it's been amazing. Like the whole process was hard because I did it on my own. My aunt was the one who did the graphics of it, but like the writing and figuring out how to self-publish and putting it out in the world, like I did that on my own, trial and error. I cried some of the times because I was so frustrated. I was like, I don't, God help me. I was like my prayer, like God help me. But at the end of the day, just holding my book in my hand was like one of the most amazing feelings in the world. And I can't wait to write my memoir, to go into more details, obviously, of everything that I went through to shed light on mental health and shed light on getting out of toxic relationships and being able to thrive and use that pain for purpose. So yeah, that's my
yeah,
book.
that's beautiful. And then it is incredible that you took the courage of putting in writing to help yourself, and then also now publishing, you're helping others with that beautiful message in your poems. One of the things that you mentioned is having a disorder, a mental disorder, without being diagnosed for so many years, and then affects people around you and yourself. I want to encourage, to take this moment to encourage our audience to say there is no shame on feeling that something is wrong, something it's happening to me, and there is no shame on looking for help. There is actually um, as an an ideal situation that you look for help, because that gives you courage and that
Hmm.
shows how brave you are to recognize that not everything is perfect. And we are not perfect. We all have our flaws. So look for help if you need to. And don't feel like going to the shrink, like some people call it.
Yeah.
It's not a shrink. It's going to another human being that is studied how how is the human behavior and will be able to help. And going forward, now you're in medical coding.
Yes.
So it's like you have your master's degree in in healthcare
Mhm.
administration. So that helps with the medical coding. Tell us a little bit about that world of medical coding.
Yeah, so I got into that world because I am the type of person who loves learning, and I love learning new things because, again, you never know where it could take you. You never know. And I don't know, I just love learning. And so I actually did a course in medical assisting. It was like a nine months course. You get certified, and then you can go, work at a doctor's office. You can work in a lot of different places. So I went to go work at the doctor's office. So when you come to the doctors and the person who takes your weight, your vitals, and puts you in the room and maybe draws blood or gives you, that's what I was doing. And so there's two sides to medical assistant. There's the clinical side and then there's the administration side. And I noticed very, very, very quickly that I did not like the clinical side. I was like, this is not for me. Give me the administrations. I will deal with the referrals. I will deal with the medical records. I will deal with the insurances. I'll do all of that. But I did not want to do anything clinical. And
Yes.
so where I was working, I was doing everything in the front desk area. And so the billing manager actually realized how quickly I picked things up. So, because I was literally doing everything in the front desk, and she was like, "Hey, I need help with billing. Are you willing? Like, I know you learn things quickly. Are you willing to learn, pretty much?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." So she taught me, the basics of medical billing, which goes hand in hand with coding. And so she had me start with like rejections and denials and like sending appeals for the denials to the insurance, and little by little I learned a little bit. And so I did research and I looked into it, and I was like, okay, you can, with more experience and your certifications, like you can make good money with billing, medical billing and coding. So I eventually got a position, not in this office. I actually eventually went to a different office and I got a full-time medical billing position. It got more experience. And then eventually I got certified. So there's a
Mhm.
certification that you take. And then I was like, I want to take this further because while I was doing the certification, I was also doing my bachelor's. And so I was like, okay, I love psychology and I love, mental health and all of that. However, at that time, I was just me and my daughter. And then in order to go the psychology route, I was like, man, I would have to do clinicals and all this other stuff that I can't do right now as a single mom. So I went the safe way is what I say is with the medical insurance or medical coding and everything, because healthcare is always going to be there. I mean, unfortunately, look at the pandemic. Like a lot of people lost their jobs, but
Yes.
those in the healthcare field, like we were busy. Let me just say that. So I truly enjoy it. I enjoy it because the codes change every year. And so, like, we either get new codes or they take away codes. And so we have to do continuing education in regards to that. Health laws, health policies that are put into place that affects my job all the time. Because I deal with government insurance, so Medicaid, Medicare. So whenever any new policies or things like that, that affects my job. So it's constantly changing, constantly having to continue learning. And that's the type of person that I am. I love learning. So it's not a job for everyone because, again, there's a lot of research. There's a lot of people will say that it's boring because you're looking at codes and things like that. But I see it as like a puzzle. Like, okay, this code goes here because the doctor did this, and stuff like that. So that's how I got into it, just because I was willing to learn. And then as I learned more, I was like, okay, I actually enjoy this. And there's so many different positions that you can work in. So currently I am a coding analyst. So what I do is I work for a health insurance. So obviously with health insurance, we provide benefits, like what we're going to pay and what we're not going to pay. So what I do is I read the medical policy that the medical writer writes with in regards to benefits, and then I have to find the codes that goes with that policy.
Okay.
So once the doctor, the hospital, any health institution sends us the health insurance, the claim, the codes have to be correct in regards to that policy. So if I don't put those codes correctly, then your claim gets denied, and it's a
Denied.
whole yeah, it's a whole back thing. So that's what I do. That's how I got into it, and I truly enjoy it. Like it's good. It's good for me.
Awesome. So
Yeah,
excellent. Yes, I've been on the other end. It's like,
yeah.
why are this denied?
Why did this deny? Yep,
Yes.
yep. And there is actually a there because we're humans. There is a lot of actually coding mistakes that happen because again there's so many things change all the time. Sometimes the documentation is not correct, so I definitely highly encourage for people to check their bills, call their health insurance again if it's denied, why, get that explanation why it was denied. You can, if you know anyone who works in the medical coding field, like you can ask like, hey, was this actually built like coded correctly, because mistakes do happen and sometimes claims do get denied incorrectly, so definitely you can check that and fight back.
Yes, yes, exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then what we talk about your writing, we talk about your family, your upbringing, we
Yeah.
talk about what you're doing for the analysts, but now I also want to talk about your podcast.
Yes.
I love the podcast, and I think that what you're doing is beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you for pointing out that it's not that easy as people think. Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like, and share to others. And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode.
So my podcast, The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants, came from actually an article that I read. So, but before that, I wanted to start a podcast back in 2019. I was like, oh, I want to have just talk to people and my friends and highlight the amazing things that God is doing in their life and celebrate them, right? Because I feel like we do things and we don't realize the impact that we're having, or like, so I was like, oh, I want to highlight my friends and the amazing things that they're doing. However, I did not start it until 2022. But before, like right when I decided, I was like, okay, I've been wanting to launch a podcast for this many years, okay, I'm going to do it now. And so as I was researching for like how to start, I came across this article on Medium. That's where I have some of my writings. And she was an immigrant from Kenya. And that particular article was about cultural shocks and cultural shocks that she had experienced here in the United States when she first moved, and how each one really diminished her confidence in herself. And I was like, this is deep. And people don't talk about this. People don't, when it comes to immigration, unfortunately, it's very negative. It's shed in a negative light, and people don't talk about why or what happens once immigrants get here and how they navigate, and did they know anyone? Did they have family, or and things like that. So I remember reading that article and then going to my husband, because like I had mentioned, he came when he was 9, and I was like, do you remember when you first arrived to the United States and how you were feeling and the experience? And he was like, very vividly. To this day, I remember everything. And so as he was telling me his story of like his impact and how they came from the Dominican Republic straight to New York. So it was like all these buildings and the roads, and he was like so excited to finally come to the United States, because he was going to be reunited with his dad, and just that excitement and things like that. But then he was like, where are the trees? Like we used to, have trees everywhere. There's no trees here. So as I'm listening to his story, I'm just like, that's a podcast episode right there. Just, and so I was like, okay, this is what I wanted to be. I wanted to just highlight immigrant stories, the process of coming here, because that's another thing. People think that it's easy and that the process is easy, but it's not, and it's so complex and things like that. So I was like, I want to highlight that. I want to highlight the journey, like how they felt. What was the situation, if they're comfortable sharing, what was the situation that actually led them to come to United States? A lot of times they didn't want to come. It was a decision that was made for them because they came as kids, or it was just like my life was just so hard back home, and the opportunities that the United States offers, it just seemed better, and things like that. So everyone is different. Their reasons are different, but I was like, I want to highlight that. I want to talk about that. And in the majority of my guests are entrepreneurs. They have their own businesses. So I love getting into that. Like, what made you launch your own business? How did that came about? So I give them the opportunity to promote their services and things like that. And I don't get into the politics of it because I just think that's too messy right now. But I do provide education. I have had a few attorneys be on the show, and they, provide like their journey of how they came into law, why, and just shed some light on some misconceptions that there are about the system that is in place. And a lot of them are immigrants themselves. So just think about that for a second. Like, they came from another country, they went to law school here and not in their native language. They got through law school, they passed the bar, and then now they're helping other people in their community get there. Like, that to me is just amazing.
And that is
So
beautiful.
amazing.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is amazing.
So I truly, truly enjoy the podcast. I truly enjoy the people I've connected with, and just the thank you that I get from my guests, just for providing that platform and that safe space for them to share their
Mm.
journey is what keeps me going. And like the feel, like I we mentioned off air, just the feedback that I also get from the audience is literally what keeps me going. I'm going on 2 years. I'm a one woman show, like I mentioned offline.
Yes,
Like, I do the scheduling, I do the recording, the editing, but seriously, it's the thank yous and just the stories and the feedback that really keeps me going.
it is a passion.
Yeah, it really is. And I,
It is a
and I
passion.
learned so much. Like, I learned from the different cultures how things are in other countries. I learned from people's journeys, like the hardship or just, just everything that they've been through. And then I also learn about the immigration system. Like, I learned with this podcast that there is pretty much a nanny visa that people can, it's called Up You program, and it's legit a nanny visa. Like, they can come, an American family sponsors them, and they come. So I had no idea about that until I started this podcast, because a guest came with that visa. And so again, it's just learning so much for myself, and being able to provide that education to people is it's amazing too.
Yes, that's one of the best ways to move to here, and easiest and fastest ways is to find a sponsor. And
Yep.
it's not easy, but if you find one, it is fast and very
Where to start, or what is the first step, or what is the first right step. When I launched my podcast, I literally Googled how to launch a podcast, but I got so much information, because there is a lot of information out there. We are in the information era, and sometimes it's overwhelming. Like, I felt overwhelmed. I was like, oh my gosh. But however, I'm the type of person that, like, I will figure things out on my own, which hence why I was so frustrated with the book. But I was like, I got to figure this out. So same thing with the podcast. I was overwhelmed, but I was like, I'm going to figure this out. However, not everyone is like that. Not, some people do, and they know that they need someone there to, one, either hold them accountable, or to cheer them on along the way, and provide that encouragement and things like that. So that's why I started to the course, launching. My company is De La Cruz Media, and so it's a 6 week course. And I like to say it's launching podcasts a simple way, because it can get, you can make it complicated, and it doesn't have to be. So what it is, it's a 6 week course. We meet on a one-on-one basis for 1 hour a week, and I will tell you, okay, like this week we're gonna focus on your target audience or your why and things like that. And then next week we're gonna focus on editing and setting a plan for your schedule and things like that, because podcasting is not hard. There's just a lot of work that goes
Yeah.
into it. And so I actually start off with offering a free masterclass on a monthly basis. I've been doing it virtually. I did one in person, which was really cool, but I've been doing it virtually via Zoom, and it's every month, absolutely free. It's for an hour, and I go into detail and tell you everything that you need to know about launching your podcast and and having it going. And the reason why I do that is to let you know like the behind the scenes work that it takes to run a podcast, and to see if you are able to invest that time right now, or if it's something that you like really want to do.
Yeah.
Because having the podcast and like doing this like can look great, but then when you get into like the really details of it, it's a lot. And
It
as a
is.
podcaster, it's a lot.
Yes,
So
it is.
I'm very upfront and honest with it. I'll answer questions, and then those who want to invest and get their podcast going, they sign up for the course. We meet again for 6 weeks, and we go step by step. And they have a podcast launch. Sometimes it's within that 6 weeks, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. Like they'll go through the course, and it's like, okay, I need a little bit more time for planning. Perfectly fine. I'm there for you along the way, every step of the way, to answer questions and things like that. So that has been really exciting to do, and people are interested in launching podcasts, and they just, again, they just need that extra help and that extra encouragement, because it's a lot. It's a lot, but it's so fun
It
and
is.
so worth it. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. And yes, it is not easy. Like it's not like super difficult, but there are steps that you can
Hmm.
make your life complicated, or you can make
Yes.
your life easy with it. And the other thing is, because you don't make money from podcast, especially in the beginning, you can monetize your podcast, but you're not going to monetize it on day one.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
so those first, we were talking about it before we started recording. Those first episodes and the first couple of seasons, you're on your own, because you're not making money from it, and unless you have like a big business on the side where you can actually hire a group or a team that helps you, is you're a solo, you're by yourself doing it.
Yeah.
So there are many parts, the editing part, the, putting the graphics, the social media, putting and scheduling,
Yep.
um,
Hmm.
and making sure that not only the schedule is in place, but the guest is the right guest for you. So you need to do either have a form that is very meticulous and then answers everything for you, or you have to do a pre-interview before you
Yep.
meet. Uh, and you make the decision of having the guest. So there are so many things, right, that we were just talking about. It's not just launch it, and launching it is not as fast and easy as you think. What are
Hmm.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. That is true. Because when I was launching, it was the same. It was like, oh my gosh, like how do I actually do this? Like how is this going to work? And I pretty much set a plan. It was like, okay, because mine is very niche specific. I'm talking to immigrants. So I literally started with friends and family. One of my first guests was my neighbor. They came from Venezuela, and so started with her, my stepmom, and then another friend of mine from Puerto Rico. And that also helped me get comfortable interviewing people, because that's something that I had not done before. And so it's like, okay, start with, friends and family, because if I mess up, it's my friend. It's
Yeah.
my family, so it doesn't matter. But the more I did it, the more I got comfortable with it. And I actually realized like I'm actually good at interviewing people. And I had a guest tell me that she was like, listening back to my episode, I didn't realize how much more I actually shared than what I was planning to share, not in a bad way. She was like, you just knew what questions to ask to get more out of me. And then she was also said that I made her feel comfortable in sharing. And that's the other thing. Like a lot of my guests are not podcasters and it's their first time being on a podcast. But so like they'll be nervous at first and then afterwards they're like, man, that went really good. And I'm like, yay, I'm so glad. So it's been a journey, and yeah, launching it was definitely a journey in itself. And it was like, oh, I need this. And then it's like, oh, wait, what about this and that? And it was a lot of learning along the way. Technology doesn't always work, as me and you know, and experience. It doesn't always work the way we want to. And just being flexible is a big thing too, because again, a lot of sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to, but they do work out the way that they are supposed to. So being flexible and yeah, so I want to be the person that I needed in the beginning for others to start this, because one, I do believe that everyone's story is important. And second, I believe that everyone deserves their voice to be heard. So if you do have a message that you want to put out there, if you do want to share your story, podcasting is a medium to do that. And even if you, maybe if it's not podcasting, like if you want to write a book or do anything, like I say, go for it. Life is too
Yes.
short to live with regrets, and just do what makes you happy. And I'm so glad that we now do have this platform to give a voice to the voiceless and to share our stories. Because, it was, years ago was very limited to sharing, stories and seeing who got spotlights and things like that. But like now podcasting has opened this whole new world for us, that we don't have to be a celebrity. We don't have to have a huge following to do it. And yeah, I love it. I absolutely love podcasting and I love helping people.
Yeah, and that is great because that is, I think you are the B in the B, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You are a B because you are
Mhm.
the belonging part, and then also not inclusivity. You include everybody. You make people belong, and that is part of the MB. You don't have to be a guru on it. You just have to be inclusive or help people belong. You can just choose one of the four letters and be able to help others and love others. So we're getting almost to the end of our podcast. We share about what you're doing, and is there anything that is coming next on your journey that we need to know?
Well, I'm gonna continue make launching this business, continue growing it and things like that. But I have been thinking about adding two more classes. So I currently have the master class, which is absolutely free, but I also want to teach SEO, which is search engine optimization, because one of the ways that you can market your podcast is by turning your episodes, each episode, into a blog post, but making sure that it's SEO optimized, and then you can gain organic traffic to your podcast and your website and things like that. So I do that with my podcast, and I do it for a client, and it's been amazing just like listening to these episodes and then writing a blog post about it and things like that. So I want to incorporate that as well. So it's like, okay, this is another way that you can market your podcast, but this is how, you have to do it and things like that. So, and SEO is not just for websites, it's also used for social media, it's also used for YouTube. SEO really is like the king of the internet. Like that's just how
Yes.
people are found. So I want to I have a guide that's like an introduction to SEO. So I want to do a class for that to kind of go with the guide to help people with SEO, and then the other class that I'm thinking about starting is how to use podcasts as a marketing strategy, whether it is launching your own or being a guest on
Being a guest.
podcasts. So yeah. So those are the
Awesome.
two things I'm thinking about. So we'll see. We'll see in 2024.
Awesome. And you also, I noticed on your website that you have the different guides and as
Mhm.
your products and services. You have different guides that the people can buy from you, and I will put all those links in the description. And how can people contact you?
Yes, so the best way I would say email actually. My email is my name, Heidy at HeidiDelacruz.com. So HeidiDelacruz.com by email. Whether you want to be a guest on my podcast, you can email me. Whether you have questions about launching your own, whether you want to sign up for the masterclass, anything, just send me an email. I usually respond very quickly. I do have to work on that though, because setting boundaries, within your own business. But I think email is the best way to contact me. And then I hang out on Instagram also. My handle is my name, Heidy, Heidy, period, De La Cruz, DELACRUZ 13. And that's where I'm at on Instagram. So, yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Is there any thought that you would like to say at the end and leave our audience with?
I just like to say, as always, whatever it is that you want to do, figure out a way to do it and do it. Whether you do need to hire a coach to help you, whether you do need to reach out to someone who's in the position that you want to be in, whatever it is, whether it's starting a podcast, writing a book, starting a YouTube channel, whatever it is that you want, do it. Because again, life is too short to live with regrets. And it's better to do things and try it and see that that it maybe didn't work out. It's better to do that than to live with the what if. What if I would have started the business? What if I would have started the
Yes,
podcast? So do it. Whatever it is, just do it.
love it. Thank you so much, Heidi. And for you, our audience, remember, we came here to be loved because a greater force or God brought us here with love to love one another. Till next time. Bye.
Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.